Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my Daily Dose with Tim. Today is season 3, episode 16. Oh my God, it's hard to believe that it's already episode 16. And I just want to share with everybody that I'm so pumped, exhilarated, and exhausted at the same time after attending the multifamily conference this past weekend in Toronto. And if you actually watched season 3, episode 15 already, you actually noticed that I did it at the Trust Your Talent booth that day, simply because I am committed to going online every single day at noon Eastern time to continue to create these content. And I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody that has supported my Daily Dose with Tim over the last few years here, and especially for those of you who have now provided me feedback and questions and interactions, because sometimes it does feel a little bit lonely when you're talking into the camera. And because I am going live via Zoom, and then it gets pushed over to the different platforms, so sometimes I don't always get to see you or interact with you directly until a little bit later. And so I understand 15 episodes already, and today's episode 16, and a lot of you are getting antsy to actually get something started and to get something going. So being inspired by the multifamily conference this weekend, because I'm noticing that a lot of people are having challenges with recognizing strategies for what they truly are, the property types for what they really need to be looking at, and also the real process, in my opinion. And so I'm going to start with distressed properties. And really, if you think about it, distressed properties is probably one of the most fundamental strategy or property type that we look into. Okay, so I'm calling it a property type simply because it does not restrict to just single families or multifamilies, big plex or small plex, or even commercials. The only thing that it really doesn't apply to is if you're building something from scratch, because the definition of distressed property is actually so wide that I'm hoping that after we go through this particular portion today, it makes a lot more sense. Now, with that said, though, this is likely going to be a module that will carry on for a few episodes. So if you're jumping in right now, congratulations. This is the first episode that I'm doing, starting with distressed properties. However, later on, you can probably jump back and forth. With that said, it's just a lot easier for me to leverage the materials that I've already developed over the years, and some of the materials that we have been using to train the classes. So hang on a second, let me bring this up online for y'all. And well, again, I have to look for the my Zoom box here. Okay, here we go. First things first, we're gonna really discuss what is a distressed property, and then the other one is why invest in distressed properties. I mean, we've spent quite a bit of time going over the whole buy, rent, and pray strategy, which is a joke. If you're with me at this point now, you know it really is a full-on joke. There is no such thing as the buy, rent, and pray strategy. It simply signifies the fact that that's how the amateurs do it. And fortunately and unfortunately, over the weekend, I've had so many people that came up to me after being on stage and sharing some of my thoughts and talks at the conference. And this lady literally ran up to me and asked me about how she's able to close her 10 pre-sale condos where the values have already gone down, and now the lenders are getting a little cold fee, and she now needs to scramble to close all of them with more cash. And they're all in downtown Toronto or the GTA area, which means they're not cheap from a price point standpoint. And it's difficult for me to actually look at things and be completely objective about it without looking at her entire financial statement personally and maybe corporately. However, this is the situation that I constantly run into. Now, I know if you're watching this, if you're that person, don't fault me on this, and I will never, ever share your name and your identity. So it's just that I really want this to be a learning moment for everybody. And I was very, very authentic and very open with you about how I think, how I would operate, and potentially how I would solve this situation if I were you. And so with that said, why invest in distressed property? Simply because of the BRRRR process that we've already discussed. So later on, as I'm demonstrating the principle, I will show you one or even maybe two deals to really solidify this concept. Now, I really, really want to stress the fact that this particular strategy can apply to different sizes of property. So your single family homes, as well as your multifamilies, as well as your mixed use and commercial. All of those can really fall under this particular strategy. And this is why really it's a property type, it's also a strategy. Sometimes it does get a little muddy. However, for argument's sake, we're going to view it as a strategy, okay? So moving forward, we always like to really bring it back to the circle or the wheel of wealth, as I call it, is the fact that every single strategy serves a purpose to feed into your overall wheel of wealth, just so that you can really realistically pinpoint if you are going to leverage this particular strategy to help you build income streams as well as long-term wealth. And so when it comes to distressed properties, a lot of the times, many people get into this with the hope to flip, meaning to sell it as the exit strategy so that they can get some lump sum income that will fall under the earned income bucket. Now, make sure you speak to your accountant if this is the case. If you're Canadian like me, we highly suggest that you actually leverage some sort of corporation to exercise the strategy, to execute on this strategy. And that way, if you do volume deals, you are able to capitalize on the tax benefits of it. However, again, everybody is a little different. You might be brand spanking new, you might be somewhat seasoned already, or you might be somewhere in between. However, if you would like to make sure that you keep as much as you make, because all this profit is typically seen, because it is real estate, as capital gain. And capital gain taxes are very, very high, not just in Canada. It's in most countries that I know that you will and can operate in, okay? And so if your goal is to get some lump sum income through flipping the properties after adding value, so looking at the BRRRR process, that's after you buy it, after you renovate it. So that's adding value, and then this is where you sell it. So you let go of the last 3 R's because you're not looking to rent it out whatsoever, okay? And so on some level, if you do decide to go through the entire BRRRR process, what that also means is once you rent it out, ideally, it's going to create passive income for you. And over time, it's also going to feed into your equity income. So for those of you who are slightly confused at this point, make sure you go back to the episode that I was discussing the wheel of wealth so that you understand really what each income bucket actually means. And a big part of that is how your income is actually taxed. So I didn't really come up with this. The tax authority really did, because we got to be very clear about how we're going to make money, first of all, and second of all, how we're going to protect and keep as much money as we can that we have made. Because after all, at the end of the day, it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you get to keep. Okay, so really, BRRRR is the fundamental, the very foundation for any type of strategy that you will use and any type of property type that you will acquire, because of the fact that you want to go through this value add process. It's very fundamental. And unless you are leveraging lease option as an exit strategy, leveraging single family homes, most of the times it is what we call a property first approach as an investor. And so what that also means is most of the times when you have a property first approach, we would highly, highly suggest that you look at distressed properties, okay? So moving forward now, what is a distressed property? So I understand that for most of us, a distressed property really looks like the picture on the top right corner here. And so what that means is it's basically finding something that's ugly, that's smelly, that is looking run down, or maybe even abandoned and boarded up already. When the reality is it doesn't always have to be that way. And this is why you can see the other two pictures as well. So I'm going to basically share this with you. Properties that needs work is sort of goes without saying. So sorry, I just noticed my my misspell there. Again, English is not my first language, so sometimes there's some grammatical error, so just forgive me there. So properties that need work, okay? So what does work mean? I don't know about you, for the most part, I'm not a big fan of gutting everything down to the stuff, as what a lot of investors would call it. I tend to prefer to look for properties that need what we call cosmetic repairs only. So what are cosmetic repairs? This is probably likely updating your bathrooms, your vanities, your tubs, your toilet, maybe the tiles, and maybe the fixtures, the faucet, the door handles, okay? Same thing with the kitchen. So that is basically what I would call a cosmetic update. And that those are the heavy items, in my opinion, in this case. And I know some of you might even go, I wouldn't even touch those things. I would just basically paint, update the flooring, update maybe the door handles, the light fixtures, the faucets, and maybe the trims. Okay, so everybody's definition is a little different. However, for the most part, regardless if I'm selling or keeping the property for rental, I do notice that most of these properties, I do want to, and I do need to actually update the bathtubs, the toilets, and the appliances, and the sinks, kitchen sinks, bathroom sinks. Those are typically the items that a lot of the renters will look at, or the buyers will look at, because it is also really about the first impression. I mean, if you think about it, every time we have a gathering at home, whether or not you're throwing a party, you're going to a house party, where do most people gather, and what are the rooms that most people use? And those are the things that really matter to the general public, whether they are buyers, they are going to be buying it for personal use, or even renting it out themselves, or even if they're renters, okay? So just really put yourself in the shoes of the end consumers that you are going to be exiting to, okay? So I hope that makes sense. You're exiting the deal and you're selling the property to these people. And so with that said though, sometimes we also need to make sure that we focus a little bit more on the curb appeal. So I know some investors, they will usually do a paint refresh also on the outside, on the exterior, not just on the inside. And sometimes you might even have to budget in landscaping, okay? Because depending on how physically distressed this property actually is, it will really determine on how the numbers are run. Okay. And so moving forward, this is the part that a lot of people tend to overlook because they don't have the knowledge nor have been trained to actually look for distressed owners. And so that is what I will be covering with everybody in the next episode here, okay? And so with that said, I want to quickly go back to just this part here, is the fact that the properties may be physically distressed. And these are typically the kind of properties that you see on TV shows, especially on HGTV. People like to buy ugly houses, or what we sometimes call smelly houses. And so I want to make sure that when we get to the number portions, you actually really understand all the numbers that are involved, because no disrespect, at the same time, yes, offense, because a lot of the times when you're looking at the TV show, when you're watching those TV shows and you're looking at how they run the numbers, there is a fundamental mistake, in my opinion, that they are showing these numbers. And the funny thing is, what I've noticed this past weekend is that it's not just the TV shows. I've noticed that some of the coaches in the industries, they are also running the numbers very fast and loose. And so I just want to make sure that after we finish this entire module, you don't get yourself into making those mistakes, and as a result get yourselves into financial troubles because you didn't run your numbers properly. So with that said, I just want to say thank you so much for your support again. for following me, sticking with me on my Daily Dose with Tim. I appreciate your engagement, your questions, and your suggestions. And over the weekend, I know a lot of you guys have been introduced to my Daily Dose with Tim. So if you're new to this episode right now, go back to the previous episodes and maybe even the previous seasons. Just follow my personal page, especially on Facebook, and you'll be able to find all of them. So on that note, I am going to say have a great rest of the day and happy Monday. I'm so excited to be delivering this module throughout the entire week, maybe into the next, who knows? So it all depends on how many questions you have. And on that note, have a great rest of the day and live well. I will see you at the next episode. Bye, everyone.